probably already know that colostrum is the first step in starting calves off right. But what are the other factors that come into play? Welcome to Beyond Colostrum, the show where we'll talk about how to optimize your calves with science and research that goes beyond just colostrum. We'll challenge the ways you typically manage your calves, and you might learn some new concepts beyond what you're already used to. Thanks for joining us as we go beyond colostrum.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Colostrum, an SCCL podcast. I am your host, Sydney Fortier, and today we're going to be diving into optimizing colostrum management with Enrichment. Today I am joined by two vets and researchers, Dr. Juliana Mergh, Leão, and Dr. Dave Renaud. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to them to introduce themselves. How are you guys doing today?
Great, how are you?
Awesome, yeah.
Good, very good, thank you.
Yeah, so Juliana, do you want to start? Where are you based out of, and tell us a little bit about you.
Sure, so I'm Juliana, I'm a vet. I studied in Brazil, Federal University of Minas Gerais. After I finished my vet studies, I did a master in calf health and nutrition, and then after that I did a PhD in the lab of Dr. Sandra Gesteda Coelho, also in calf. And in 2018, I moved to the Netherlands. So I'm based in the Netherlands, Europe, and I work for SCCL over 6 years, just working with colostrum in Europe in 10 plus countries.
Yeah, and it's been so fantastic to be able to work with you and learn from you. Dave, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm based in Guelph, Ontario. It's quite cold here right now, which is always fun. Kind of go through my educational background. So I've done 3 degrees here at the University of Guelph, which is where I'm based. DVM degree, so veterinarian, also have a PhD in epidemiology. And my research program is predominantly focused on calves. I've published lots of papers on calf health and welfare and kind of everything to do with calf management is really where my area of expertise kind of lies on. So excited for our conversation today, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So really diving into it, this whole conversation really centers around colostrum quality. So from your guys' perspective, what is colostrum quality? Obviously, it's passive immunity, so that antibody concentration is super important. But what does colostrum quality mean in practice and in science from your guys' perspectives?
I don't know what Juliana thinks, but I think we often define colostrum quality about the quantity of IgG that's in there, but we know it's much more than that. It's not just IgG. We focus on IgG because that's what's easiest to measure. And I think traditionally we define like good quality colostrum as being more than 50 grams of IgG per liter of colostrum. But there's maybe some nuance around that, especially with more data and more research being done to show really the importance of achieving high levels of passive immunity in calves when they're fed colostrum. I don't know what you think, Juliana. Is that kind of similar definition?
No, I totally agree. We measure the quality of colostrum based on the concentration of IgG. It's because it's what we can measure, like Dave said. But we know now that there are many other factors in colostrum that will impact the quality. We don't measure them yet. We still use the concentration of IgG to measure the colostrum quality. And we use the 50 gram per liter mark to say if the colostrum is good or not good enough. So above the 50 gram mark, it's considered good colostrum. And we can correlate that also with Brix, and we can talk more about that later on.
Yeah, so that 50 grams per liter of IgG, is that kind of like what we would see consistently naturally from maternal colostrum? And that's kind of why that's the indicator, or is there different reasons for why we shoot for 50 grams per liter?
Yeah, I think to be honest, I think when you look at that 50 gram per liter mark, I think it's pretty arbitrary. I think it was based on expert opinion back in the day because we wanted to maximize the concentration of IgG being fed to the calf. I think we probably need to revisit some of those thresholds to say whether 50 grams per liter is enough or should be enough. Um, yeah, so I think it's pretty arbitrary kind of where that 50 grams came from. It's more of a historical kind of threshold that I think we have often adopted in the industry because, yeah, it's just one of those things we do because we, you know, kind of rely on old data because we've always done it kind of thing. But I think we do really need to evaluate whether or not that is the optimal threshold anymore. And we probably should focus more on delivering a certain quantity of IgG to the calf rather than just focused on the quantity of IgG in there or the quantity of colostrum that we feed. It should probably be the total amount of IgG we feed to the calf should be probably the goal rather than focus on an arbitrary cut point that we decided many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a study that Dr. Manuel Campos presented maybe years ago, just showing a graph that when we give 100 grams of IgG to a calf, they reach the threshold of 10 grams per liter in their serum. So like Dave said, I believe it was arbitrary choice of, okay, how much do we give for the calf to achieve this minimum level of 10? That was the past threshold that was acceptable. So from now on, we need to pay attention not only to the quality of the colostrum, we need to pay attention on the quantity of colostrum that we are giving, on the time that we take to give this colostrum, and the other factors that will affect the absorption of IgG. So I think it's really important that we focus on the colostrum quality, but also the quantity, the time, and how we can measure that on the calves after 24 hours, 48 hours to check if we are doing well on the farm. So I think that's the main, just the colostrum protocol that we should be following and trying to improve every day by adjusting some points on the quality, quantity, and so on.
Yeah. And so what does that look like as a practice on farm in terms of determining colostrum quality and making sure that not only is it being delivered to calves, but that it's actually like contributing to excellent passive transfer?
So usually on farm, what we see is that they measure the Brix of the colostrum. They can use a refractometer or digital or optical, can be any of it. It has a good correlation with IgG concentration that is in colostrum between 0.8, 0.9. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. And they use the Brix to assess the quality of their own colostrum. And based on that, they will know what they are giving to the calves.
Yeah, and it's nice and practical too, right, Juliana? Like it's easy for producers to do, in my opinion, where you take a little bit of colostrum, put it onto a refractometer, and you get a reading really, really quickly, and it tells you pretty fast, like, is that stuff good or is it bad? And yeah, I think if you look at the industry kind of overall, I think there's an opportunity for us to really measure it a little bit better because I think for some farms, I think it just doesn't happen enough where we're not actually measuring the quality of colostrum we're feeding to calves. We're just assuming that, based on the color, based on the consistency, that it's good enough. But we know that that's not necessarily correlated to high quality colostrum. We actually have to really measure it to really ensure that what we're feeding to the calves is that kind of liquid gold, that high level of IgG that we really want to feed to the calf. So I think overall in the industry, I think there's still lots of room for improvement in terms of measuring quality and really ensuring that that calf's getting that minimum amount of IgG that we really want them to be fed.
And so, like approaching the testing side of it, is it something that it's kind of almost like a check-in, so I can test, like batch test my colostrum. Okay, no, it's good, so I should be good, and then I'll wait till like kind of the next season and I'll start testing it again? Or is it more of a like every time before that I'm feeding that calf that colostrum, should I be testing it? I guess like it's like, yeah, what are the parameters of it? It's like, is it just like a one-off kind of thing, or yeah, what's good testing management?
It's an excellent question, actually, because every season, the same cow can give you different colostrum quality. So you should check every time.
Yeah, and I think if you look at colostrum in general, it's foundational. And I think if we look at some of the research that's been done looking at the importance of passive immunity, it's pretty clear that if we can get colostrum to a calf in high enough volumes and achieve their, more than 10 grams of IgG per liter of serum or even higher, that calf has substantially lower risk of disease. Like we can cut the risk of disease almost in half by making sure that they just simply achieve that. We can reduce mortality rates pretty substantially. There's also benefits in terms of improved growth. So I think although it does take some extra time to measure each individual cow and to make sure the colostrum's of high quality, I think that extra time really does pay off in terms of less labor in treating disease, less need to have more calves of it on the farm, and ultimately contributes to higher levels of productivity in the future. So I think there's a massive ROI in terms of testing every individual cow's colostrum, like Juliana was saying, because you really want to ensure that colostrum is high quality to meet those kind of thresholds that for passive immunity for that calf to have a certain amount of IgG to protect it against disease.
Absolutely. And what am I looking for? Like, what is that target Brix percent? That is, the gold standard.
Yeah, I think traditionally we use 22% Brix as our kind of gold standard. Anything above that, I think traditionally we've thought that that's a good amount of IgG because it correlates really highly with 50 grams per liter. There's a recent study that was done, I believe, by Sabine Mann's group at Cornell University, where she found that I think it was like if they're over 22% 22% on the Brix scale, it's like a 94% probability that they're over 50 grams of IgG per liter of colostrum. So I think it's a really good threshold, that 22%. But there's always that question about should our targets be higher? Should we not just simply go with 50 grams? And maybe I'll give you an example. So one of my current students is doing some work looking at a meta-analysis, which means she's looking at all the papers that have been published on feeding a certain quantity of IgG at the first feeding and looking at their predicted or percent chance that they're going to have failed transfer of passive immunity. And what she's found in the study is that probably we want to feed at least 200 grams of IgG at the first meal, at least. And there's even benefits to feeding even more. So if we go with that kind of thing, we want to achieve a minimum of 200 grams. Depending on the farm, some farms might want to feed 3 liters of colostrum at the first feeding. Some want maybe feed 4 liters of colostrum at the first feeding. So if you're feeding 4 liters, that 50 gram per liter mark is probably totally fine because you're going to achieve that minimum of that 200 grams of IgG delivered to the calf. But if you're feeding 3 liters, you probably need to have even more IgG per liter of colostrum. So bumping it up to, let's say, 65 grams of IgG per liter of colostrum. This should be the target if you're feeding 3 liters. So I think we need to be a little bit more malleable or change a little bit our perspectives on what should that percent Brix be or what should that grams of IgG per liter of colostrum be, because it probably depends on a lot of different variables on the farm, including the volume of colostrum that you're delivering to calves.
I agree with Dave. I think the 22% mark is a good mark, but we need to understand that all the managements that they do on farm will affect the absorption of the IgG on that calf. So, okay, you have a 22% Brix colostrum, great, but you should be giving 4 liters. And we know that in practice, it's not in every country that we see this practice. If you go to Italy, they will give them a percentage of body weight that will not reach these 4 liters. If you go to Brazil, probably they will reach this amount of colostrum that the calf needs. But again, how long do they take to give this same colostrum, the 22% Brix, to the calf? Because if they take too long, then the quality is not good enough. They need to be higher to be able to achieve the good absorption. So then we will look on new Brixes or new concentrations of IgG of the colostrum based on what Dave was explaining. If we look at the 50 gram per liter mark, 22% Brix, then you need to give 4 liters of colostrum. But if you have a higher Brix of a colostrum, for example, a 25% Brix, then you can reach this 200 grams with a lower volume. So that's how you have to do when you assist a farm. You need to understand the management.
And so say I am one of those like producers and I am having an issue with my antibody absorption for whatever reason. And my maternal colostrum is either below or it is 22%, but you kind of want me to be higher than that. Is there things that I can do management wise or what, like I feel like at least my conversations with some producers is sometimes it's, well, this is what I'm dealing with and so this is what this is what I'm feeding and I have to roll with the punches because this is what I have available to me. So is there anything in that situation where either cow management or colostrum management that we can do to kind of either bump up the Brix or IgG content or anything like that?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities at least to explore kind of what's happening on the farm in terms of cow level management. Like certainly exploring time to harvest of colostrum is important. There's pretty good evidence to say that the longer that you wait to collect colostrum from the cow after calving, the worse the colostrum quality is. So I think in that example, you could probably start to troubleshoot when are you collecting the colostrum? Are you waiting too long to collect it? And that could potentially be an issue. There's also some dietary things. There's heat stress that also influences the quality of colostrum as well. So I think trying to explore some of those things as well can be helpful to at least help the producer try and bump up some of the quality of colostrum.
What I like to also do when I'm on farm, like I'm going to your farm and you have this issue, I like to check the quality, the microbiological quality of the colostrum that you are collecting, because that will impact a lot on the absorption of IgG of the calves. So I check how clean you collect the colostrum and how clean you give to the calf. Is your tube clean? Or if you are giving by bottle, is the bottle clean? Then after I check that and you pass everything, then I'm like, okay, let's move on and okay, let's improve the quality by adding, for example, a colostrum powder in your colostrum, maternal colostrum. So I think step by step, you can do these small changes in your farm that can improve the colostrum management, and you will see a result on the serum IgG of the calf.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that always it doesn't always surprise me, but it makes sense and it's kind of funny. It logically it connects, but to like hear it sometimes it's important that these calves are born immunologically naive, right? And so why would you want to feed with tube feeders or buckets or pails or anything like that that does have whether it's physically dirty or isn't properly disinfected? It's not really setting them up on a for success, I guess, right? If we're trying to give them an immune system, but also introducing baby's first pathogen, that's a little bit counterproductive. So yeah, just like simple things like that that really make a big difference that I think we all probably can improve on, really. Um, I wanted to take it back a little bit because we kind of keep bouncing back and forth between Brix percent and IgG grams per liter. What is the correlation between that? So we're saying 22% Brix. I'm pretty sure I heard that that was pretty on with 50 grams of IgG per liter.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess, can you give me a little bit of like a range of like Brix percent and what that would look like in terms of IgG content?
Sure.
Yeah, I think Juliana did a good job outlining like correlation. It's pretty highly correlated. So you're getting correlation coefficients of like 0.8, 0.9, which means that if you have high levels of Brix, you can be pretty confident that you have high levels of IgG and colostrum. So it's pretty highly correlated. In terms of like thresholds for maybe higher levels of Brix, I think we've actually done a pretty poor job validating them and really coming up with higher thresholds and seeing what percent Brix is equivalent to, let's say, 60 grams per liter or 70 or 75. I think like kind of thumb rules, I guess, for some of it would be, I think maybe a 25% Brix would be equivalent to 75 grams of IgG per liter of colostrum. A 30% Brix is probably 100 grams of IgG per liter of colostrum. But to be honest, I think we need to do a little bit better job validating those thresholds and really trying to create some more kind of producer or farmer friendly information on what should those higher Brixes be in correlation to the cut points for those individual like 75 or higher grams per liter. I don't know what you think, Juliana, about that.
Yeah, I agree. We do approximately. We never say exact because we are not sure. So I think we need more studies. We need to understand better. And the base, the maternal colostrum, is going to be different. So that will also affect.
And I think the nice part with SCCL testing so much colostrum, which they do for all their products, I think we can hopefully answer that question soon and come up with some resources about how certain percent Brix is equivalent to those different thresholds for IgG.
But one thing we know for sure, the 25 Brix, it's going to be better than 22, and the 30 Brix is going to be better than 25. So we know the higher is the Brix, the higher is the quality. That is something that we are sure.
And that kind of leads in really nicely to the topic that we're dancing around today, which is enrichment. And so, can you guys explain to me or dive into a little bit more about what enrichment is and kind of the point that you made, Juliana, the higher the Brix, the better. So what is the opportunity that we have with enrichment to improve calf health and care?
I'm not sure if we touched on that today. I think Dave did. Why we are talking about enrichment? It's because of literature has published many papers showing the variability on the maternal Brix of the colostrum, of maternal colostrum Brix, the differences on the variability on that. So around 20 to 30% of the maternal colostrum, they are going to be below the minimum quality that we want. So that's why we started talking about enrichment. Enrichment is adding a colostrum powder on top of maternal colostrum to increase the potency, so increase the IgG concentration of the maternal colostrum. Basically, that's the concept.
Yeah, there's pretty good science, like Juliana said, about utilizing this type of strategy to improve passive immunity, because you're just concentrating the maternal colostrum by adding an additional IgG into the pool and feeding that to the calf, and that'll boost your levels of passive immunity. So it's a way practically on farm that if you're finding that calves are, or that your colostrum is less than 50 grams of IgG per liter, less than 22% of the Brix scale, it's something actionable that you can do. Instead of going like, oh, I can't feed this colostrum, or I'm going to discard it or not use it at all, you can still use that colostrum, but just adding in a certain quantity of IgG to further boost it up to an appropriate level to feed to the calf.
How common is like huge ranges of variability of colostrum quality?
I think it is pretty variable, and was a recent study done in Quebec, Canada, where they did. I think they took colostrum samples from about 100 farms across Quebec, and what they found was tremendous variability, ranging from, like, on average for the average farm being like 30 grams of IgG per liter to or more than 100 grams of IgG per liter. So I think it can be tremendously variable, and for farms that aren't continuously measuring it, they're going to miss out on that variability. They're not going to see it because they won't see that they're feeding a calf at 20% Brix, whereas they're feeding another calf at 30% Brix. So that's why it's really important to measure it to really see what variability you have on your individual farm. And the nice part is with enrichment is you can act on it. So you're not just doing it to generate numbers and write it on a sheet. You're doing it with an actionable or something actionable for that individual calf to further boost up its levels of passive immunity. So I think it's a pretty practical strategy to feed more IgG to each individual calf.
Yeah, and you can standardize the calves better. Like you have different calves that will receive different colostrum, then you can standardize all the colostrum quality of the calves, and then you can quantify on the calves to check if the colostrum management is good or if you need improvement in some point of it. So I think it's a very good strategy to do enrichment. It's easy, it's practical, and you are only giving the benefits for the calves.
And what are those benefits?
Like we discussed, we are increasing the IgG concentration of the colostrum, but not only the IgG, because the colostrum powder is whole colostrum, so it has all the other bioactive factors that are present in colostrum. So we know that these other components will play important roles in the calf immunity, and it will prevail for longer in the calf. If they receive a higher colostrum quality, they are more able to absorb, and they will prolong their protection, and they will be able to fight diseases and become healthier if they absorb everything that you are giving to them.
Yeah, and if you measured the benefit for the individual calf and you took a blood sample, so let's say you fed a calf less than 50 grams of IgG per liter and you took a blood sample, it could be higher probability that they're going to not have enough IgG absorbed into their circulation. And so if you enrich the colostrum and make it 50 grams per liter or more, you're probably going to see benefits in terms of improved passive immunity. So you're going to have a higher proportion of calves that achieve successful passive immunity and have enough immunoglobulins or IgG that are present in their blood to fight off disease, which is what we really want with colostrum. So you're going to see, like Juliana said, from all the other components of colostrum, you're going to boost that too. But from the calf's perspective, it's going to have more IgG, better able to fight off disease, and hopefully remain healthier for its pre-weaning period, at least.
Yeah, because that's when I stop and think, like, why do we raise calves? I always have this question: why are we raising calves? We are raising them to become the cow of the herd, right? That's the most easy answer. So we want to raise calves that are healthy. So if we are able to give to these calves high immunity at the beginning, these calves are going to have less disease on the pre-weaning period. And with less disease, they can gain more weight, and this will directly affect the production of milk of them when they become cows. I always think of that, like when I'm thinking of a calf, I'm thinking of the future of this animal. So I think it's makes sense to give good colostrum and a very first start for the calf.
Yeah, it's an investment, right? It's an investment in that calf's future. And if you can do everything right, like we talked about earlier on, you want that calf to grow well, you want it to not have disease, because we know that impacts future productivity. And like you're saying, Juliana, if you give the calf the proper colostrum, it gets it off to a good start and it turns into that future cow in the herd that's productive, that you want to retain, and you want the replacements out of that animal. So it's pretty profound what we do in the first few hours of their life has massive impact and really lays the foundation for the rest of it, because of all the different components in colostrum beyond just IgG. So it's pretty incredible what it can do.
Is there any limitations to enrichment? You say the more the better. So is there any concern with me taking probably a good quality colostrum that might be hitting 22, even 25% and taking that to 35 or 40? Is there is there a ceiling to where the benefits just kind of end, or?
Okay, so we usually do not recommend to reach above 30% Brix. We don't know if the above 30% Brix will affect the osmolarity so much that can negatively impact the calf. So that's not what we recommend, to go above 30% Brix. But we know that in nature, maternal colostrum can reach 30, 35, or even more. We know that can happen. We are not sure on the limitations of doing enrichment above that target.
Yeah, I think from a research perspective, the trials that we've done here at Guelph, mostly led by Mike Steele, has shown that maybe you're not going to get the as much bang for your buck as you go kind of higher than probably 25% Brix. You're probably not going to see that incremental improvement in passive immunity beyond that. So I think there's more work that needs to be done, to be honest with you, Sydney, about what is the optimal level, especially tying in some of the kind of return on investment, that type of stuff with the individual strategies. So I think there's more work that needs to be done. What should be the threshold? Because I think right now it's in that study that Mike Steele's group did, it was only two different levels of enrichment. So what happens if you kind of change around what your target should be, what your threshold should be, is that I think we need more information, is really what it comes down to.
coming from more of a practical angle, how much powder do I add? And like, what does that like translate to if I want to increase my Brix by 3%, let's say?
So usually you can use an app or a table to do that. Let's say you have a 22% Brix and you want to bring up to 25% Brix. So you need to enrich 3% per liter. So let's do that slow. To increase 1% of the Brix, you need 15 grams, 15 grams of the powder. So if you are going to that for 3 grams, for 3%, you need 45 grams of colostrum. But if you are going to give 4 liters of colostrum, then you need 180 grams of colostrum powder to enrich. So 45 times 4. Okay, so I'll just repeat really quickly. So to increase 1%, you need 15 grams of colostrum powder. So if you want to go from 22 to 25, you need to increase 3% Brix. So you need 45 grams of colostrum. That times 4 liters of the first feed of the calf, you will need 180 grams of colostrum. So it's just simple mathematics.
Mm-hmm. And if you're someone like me who's not great at math, you did mention that SCCL does have a fabulous colostrum calculator that allows you to put like how much you're feeding, what you're starting with, and what that that powder addition needs to be. So
yeah, I find that calculator app to be incredibly beneficial. I think to just to see what your Brix is and what you want to enrich to, and it gives you the amount of colostrum to add. But I didn't know that, Juliana, the 1% Brix, 15 grams. That's a good thumb rule too.
We did get into the conversation about of passive transfer and quantifying that. So when we are looking at making adjustments to colostrum management and protocol, and we're trying to make sure that it's doing good, what testing are we doing to calves to make sure that the changes that I'm making are making a difference?
Yeah, I think ideally you want to take blood samples on your calves to check it, which in some places in the world doesn't happen too often. And I think we need to encourage doing this a little bit more to really making sure, is your colostrum management program working, and putting some numbers behind it. If you think about all the numbers we generate on cows on a annual or daily basis even, it's substantial. But if you think about the numbers we generate on calves, it's very minimal. And I think one of the basic things that we really need to start quantifying is how good are our calves getting for passive immunity, that transfer of the IgG through the intestine into the bloodstream. If you want to do it, the best way to do it is blood sample, ideal on a calf that's 24 to 48 hours if you want to be most accurate. There's lots of indirect ways in which we can measure IgG. So you take the blood sample, you spin it down, you get the calf serum, or you leave it sit in a fridge for 24 hours and it settles out and you get the top yellow stuff on the top of the tube. Put it onto even your Brix refractometer that you use for measuring colostrum quality, or you put it onto a optical refractometer or digital refractometer that measures serum total protein. That's a good way in which we can measure kind of indirectly the level of IgG. So if you're talking about kind of the basic thresholds, ideally you want to be more than 5.1 grams per deciliter on serum total protein at the bare minimum. There are other ways that we can do it, kind of measuring IgG directly, and we can do that through radial immunodiffusion. There's also ELISA testing that we can do as well that really directly quantify IgG that's present in the serum. And that's kind of our best way in which we can do it. So if you're maybe feeding what you think you should be for colostrum and you're not maybe getting the results that you expect, maybe consider testing it with RID, radial immunodiffusion, or ELISA testing to really see what your levels of IgG really are. Because maybe there's something off with your refractometer. Maybe you're feeding a colostrum replacer, doing complete replacement with colostrum replacer, which does influence the correlation between serum total protein and IgG. Or maybe you're just measuring it at too late of a stage. It could all be kind of the things to consider.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned all these tests and different serum levels, Dave, because if we can see have the table here, down here, just showing the different levels, I think it would be interesting. I think what is super important to remember is that before 2020, We use the threshold of successful transfer of passive immunity above 10 grams per liter on the serum IgG. And after 2020, we have now different categories. Publication done by Lombard and a very big group of researchers. They showed that if we achieve excellent levels, that would be above 25 grams per liter in the serum, these calves are much more healthy. They have lower risks of diseases and also lower risk of mortality. So I think what Dave is mentioning, that we should be aiming to have calves that are excellent or very good, because then we will have calves that are also excellent and very good.
Yeah, and their thresholds for excellent are more than double of what we traditionally thought for poor. So they're going from like our kind of baseline of 10 grams, now we're going up to 25 grams of IgG per liter of serum. So massive improvement. And I think when we talk with producers, I think a lot of producers are probably doing at least a reasonable job getting enough calves into that above 10 category. But now we need to further refine our colostrum management programs to be getting more calves in that 25 grams, which I think can be certainly challenging. But the quality of colostrum that we feed to the calves has a massive impact or massive influence on that proportion that are getting to that higher category, which is why we're talking about colostrum quality in this podcast and enrichment and all those strategies to really try and drive calves into that excellent category, which we know will prevent disease and all those things that I've talked about before.
What is your main piece of advice for people who are starting to evaluate their colostrum management and wanting to standardize, I guess, their quality of care? What I know it's very dependent on where you're at in the world, and I mean, what side of the street you happen to walk on, then which farm you happen to be at that day. But is there something that's kind of like a main line through?
Like personally, I think you can't manage what you don't measure. So if you're not measuring anything, how can you manage it? So that comes down to quantifying passive immunity. It comes down to quantifying the quality of colostrum that you're feeding to calves. Like those are two, I think, really foundational things, really, really important things that if we can start to measure it, now we can manage it better. We can understand, are we meeting those thresholds? We can understand, is our colostrum quality good enough? And then make management changes to improve those levels of passive immunity, improve the colostrum quality, whether it's through our cow level factors, whether it's through enrichment. There's lots of things that we can do to really improve. So if there's one kind of takeaway that I hope that people have, it's really measure things. It's amazing what you'll figure out if you can start to quantify, whether it's passive immunity and colostrum quality or many other things that are happening on a dairy farm.
Yeah, my answer is the same. The two first things that I'm going to talk about when I'm on farm is check the quality of the colostrum and check the transfer in the calves during 24 or 48 hours after colostrum management. So what I like to do when I'm checking on the calves is having all the results. After I have all the results, I put them in the Lombard table and check what's the percentage of my calves are failing or in the fair category or in the good category or in the excellent category. And based on that, I know that I need to act and improve my colostrum management on farm. So those are the two things that I like to do if it's possible.
Yeah, and for those wondering where to get a Brix refractometer, I literally just ordered mine from Amazon just last week. So they're super easy to come by and relatively pretty cheap to considering like the potential to be able to inform kind of your management there. I feel like when I'm having conversations with producers that the biggest issue that they have is with time. And so does testing colostrum and this type of is it a very, I know we kind of dipped into it a little bit, but is it like, how much time does it take? Like how much time is this going to take away from me doing something different?
I think that will depend on the size of the farm, but the testing of the quality of the colostrum can be done in the parlor or right after it's out of the parlor. The Brix refractometer is super quick. So you just need to introduce this one more step to the management of the colostrum. that will take less than a minute per sample or per colostrum that they collect. So I understand that changing management is not the easiest and it's not the preferred thing to do on farm. People don't like changes, but like Dave said, if you don't measure, you don't know how you're going to improve colostrum if you don't know the quality of the colostrum that you are giving to the calves and how the calves are acquiring or not the immunity from the colostrum.
The way that I would look at it too, Sydney, is that, yeah, time to take that sample to make sure that you're getting accurate Brix is really important. But also think about the time it takes to treat a sick calf. Like, how long does that take? How long does it go out to treat that calf with diarrhea or treat that calf with pneumonia in the pre-weaning period? It can add up to a lot. Not only just like going out and finding the sick calf, but now you got to go get the treatment or electrolytes that you got to go give to the calf or whatever other treatments you're going to provide to the calf. That's a substantial time amount. So I think if we're thinking, how do we save time? This is actually a good strategy to save time, because we know that if we feed more IgG to the calf, we know that their risk of disease is much less. And so that, Juliana, the 1 to 5 minutes probably it takes to measure the colostrum quality, that's going to return massive time back to you in terms of not treating that sick calf, not treating that calf with pneumonia. So I think that's how I would view it, as you're investing your time now and probably saving time in the future.
Yeah, and we need to remember that after day 1, there is no opportunity of improving absorption of immunoglobulins for the calf. That's the day that you need to invest.
And it's not so much even 24 hours, right? Like the peak time for absorption really is in that first, like, well, as soon as the calf drops until about 4 hours, if I'm not mistaken. I know we usually recommend it's as soon as possible, but within 2 hours is, yeah, that's when you're gonna have your best chance at excellent passive transfer ultimately. So you guys have mentioned about there's the definition of colostrum quality, and largely that is antibody and IgG concentration, but there are other components at work. And so what are these other components, and why are they important?
Yeah, so there's lots of different components in colostrum. I think that's what makes it so good, is it's not just one single thing that makes it good. It's the level of lactoferrin, which we know has antibacterial properties in it. It's the level of insulin-like growth factor that's crucial in gut development. It's the level of fat in the colostrum. We know colostral fat for a calf that's experiencing hypothermia or low body temperature, that can and certainly help to improve its thermoregulation. Protein, lactose, there's all these different components that are really crucial in setting that calf up for success. It's not just IgG. The reason we focus so much on IgG is it's so easy to measure, it's so easy to quantify. But for many of those other components, yeah, it's difficult. You have to send it to a lab. You have to have a PhD microbiologist or whatever go and do the testing, which makes it complex. So IgG is focused on because it's easy, but there's lots of other components that are just as important as IgG.
Yeah, so one thing we do talk about a lot at SCCL is the importance of colostral fat. Can you guys tell me a little bit about what the difference is between colostral fat and I guess other fat sources, and why it's so important for the calf in this scenario?
So I'll start, and I think maybe Dave can continue. We understand, like Dave said, that the calf is born and then they are intrauterus and they are in a good temperature for them. But when they are out, they are going to face a little bit of hypothermia. And we understand that this calf can take up to 72 hours to thermoregulate and get to the body temperature that they should. So we understand their need of receiving a fat so they can thermoregulate faster. By receiving a colostral fat, this colostral fat will ignite the thermoregulation of this calf. So this calf will be able to reach the right temperature faster, and they will not spend energy in other ways, like shivering or just spending energy that they should be just building temperature because they have the cholesterol fat, for example. And also there are some studies that were published, I believe, last year or the year before on the different composition of the fat that the calves need from day one on. So if you give to the calf a fat that is not what they really need, then they are not going to be able to utilize that the way that they need to metabolize and to spend this energy the way that they need. I don't know if I explained that correctly, but yeah, basically they need the cholesterol fat, and you should be giving them cholesterol fat instead of just giving them another type of fat they will not be able to metabolize.
Exactly. And I think there needs to be a little bit more information on it. Like there are those two studies, Juliana, that you talked about last year that were published. And I think there's also an SCCL one that was done looking at comparing whole bovine colostrum to defatted colostrum, so pulling the cholesterol fat out, and showed the calves are better able to thermoregulate. But at Guelph, we're going to try and do a study probably in the next few years looking at calves that are experiencing cold stress and feeding them colostrum and seeing how that changes their metabolism and how that influences their ability to manage their temperature better comparatively to a calf that was fed maybe a low-fat or a no-fat colostrum.
And can I see that on a label? Like because this clearly makes a difference. So how do I make sure that I'm getting a product that is providing that cholesterol fat coming from a bovine source?
So when we are looking at the product, we should look at the ingredient list. So in the ingredient list, the first ingredient should be bovine colostrum, whole bovine colostrum. If you are reading there and they have colostrum, like bovine colostrum, and then after that they have oils, then most, like the probability of the cholesterol fat that they are not there, it's very high. The other way that you can look in the label is the percentage, the composition. Usually when they remove the bovine cholesterol fat, the oil content of the ingredient is around 3 to 5%. This is very low. When you look at a whole colostrum product, this percentage is between 18 to 23, even 25%. So this is bovine cholesterol fat. So you need to check the label, ingredient first, and then the composition.
Anything else that I should be looking for on a label at all, or
if you are trying to find a bovine colostrum, you should be trying to find a product that over 95% is bovine colostrum, whole bovine colostrum.
In your guys' experience as researchers and veterinarians and consultants and all the hats that you kind of wear in the roles that you participate in, what is the most common question or issue that you run into with producers in terms of colostrum management? Or I'll narrow it down even, I know that was so broad and just so lofty, but how about enrichment? Like, is there any sort of the challenges that people run into that you wouldn't expect, or is it really just as easy breezy beautiful as it seems?
Honestly, I think it's pretty straightforward. I personally haven't run into too many issues with it, but I think, Juliana, you do a lot more hands-on stuff than I do. So I'll let you take that.
Okay, so one question that I get a lot is, oh, I mixed the colostrum powder on top of the maternal colostrum, and I could not mix well. So first thing, what was the temperature of the maternal colostrum? Usually, if it's too cold, then you cannot mix so well. If it's warm enough, like body temperature warm, you can mix it well. Ideally, if you mix at 43 degrees Celsius, it mixes even better, between 43 and 49. But if you are mixing and you want to give to the calf right away, then I don't mind that you mix at body temperature of the calf. But that's the top one for enrichment, the question, I would say. Second one, if I mix and the mixture it's going to be too thick or not. And usually by using the app, doing the measurement with the Brix refractometer, it does not get too thick. So it's pretty okay. And then the third question would be, if it is too thick, can I add a little bit of water? So I tell them, first, let's check the volume that you have. If you have between 3 to 4 liters, I do not mind that you add a little bit of water and give everything to the calf. But of course, the size of the calf needs to be a regular Holstein size calf.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and kind of leads into, I guess, another question that I had. If like, do recommendations change based on breed? Kind of like what you mentioned, if it is like a Jersey, then obviously you're not going to be trying to put as much volume into them as you would or could with a Holstein calf. But is there any other breed considerations when it comes to colostrum management or enrichment?
If you have small calves, for sure, you need to give them between 8 to 10% of body weight. So if you have a Jersey calf that is weighing 20 kilograms, you are going to give between 1.5 to 2 liters of colostrum. So the volume will be based on that. Quality, you can try to have the target of the quality the same independently on the breed. But if you are working with beef calves, then they are usually in nature, they produce a lower volume, but very high IgG concentration. So they are going to be much more concentrated than if you are working with a Holstein calf. So if you are having like artificial colostrum for beef calves, let's say, for example, Wagyu, I could recommend a smaller volume, like doesn't need to reach the 10% of the body weight of the animal, but I would go very high on Brix.
Yeah, I think a lot of our recommendations are based on Holstein animals, which makes it, I think, a little bit challenging, maybe even frustrating for some of the other breeds that are out there. But like Juliana said, I think you just have to look at the size of your calf that you're having born and probably adjust to that 8 to 10% of birth body weight, like Juliana said, to not overfeed colostrum to that animal.
Kind of leading into that, yeah, we focus a lot on Holstein and dairy calves, but we do at SCCL have applications for different species like lamb and kids. So, and I know Juliana, you've done a lot of that work. Could you just give us a little bit of a synopsis of what those recommendations are for lamb and kids?
A bit about enrichment on lamb and kids. Just a side note, depending on the breed of goats or sheep, you're going to have very different concentration of IgG and also fat content. So that is super variable. But I will give very general recommendation. What we see is that the Brix quality of small ruminants should be minimum of 25, and for sheep, even 26%. So we need to be very high in Brix to be able to give the minimum amount of IgG that these animals need. So let's say for example, for a 4 kilo lamb, this animal needs minimum of 30 grams of IgG on the first day. So dividing that by 3 feeds, for example, you will need to give 10 grams of IgG, then 10 grams of IgG, and then 10 grams of IgG. So to give this amount, these 10 grams of IgG, sounds very little because we are used to calves, but you need to give like more frequent, like 3 times. You don't need to give very big bottles or high amounts or high volumes by tube because you cannot overfeed a small lamb or a small goat. You need to be between 5 to 7% of body weight. And if you can give one more time, like 4 times a day, it's even better because you will be giving them more IgG concentration and in small volumes. So basically, my general recommendation is give very high quality on the Brix of the colostrum, above 25%, small volumes, and more frequent. You need to reach this minimum of 30 grams on the first day, 30 grams of IgG on the first day for them to be able to achieve a good transfer of passive immunity. So for small ruminants, the target for the transfer of passive immunity is the serum IgG of 15 grams per liter. So yeah, basically that's it.
You did mention at the beginning, and we talked about it a lot, of the importance of making sure that it's the colostrum powder source that you're giving is like it's coming from basically as close to nature as we can get it, right? So are we able to feed bovine colostrum to lamb and kids because they're both ruminants? I know just the accessibility and the logistics of having a sole colostrum powdered product that is made out of came from goats and sheep would be very difficult. But can you explain a little bit about like the logistics of like how we're able to feed, bovine colostrum to lamb and kids?
Okay. So from literature, ideally, we would use same species for the same species. So I would use a sheep colostrum to another lamb that doesn't have a mother, for example. A goat, a doe colostrum for another goat kid. But because of the homology between species, you can use bovine colostrum for this other species. There are some studies using like sheep colostrum in goat kids and also doe colostrum in lambs. It also works. And of course, bovine colostrum is tested in both species and it works. My one point here would be that for specific diseases that bovine will not have contact, they will not produce antibody against, and therefore they will not be able to protect the small animal against this specific disease. But overall, it's a good strategy to use bovine colostrum in small ruminants, especially when you have orphans or if you are going in a process to treat against some disease, for example, CAE here in the Netherlands, very common. So yes, you can use bovine colostrum for small ruminants, but you need to know that and you need to understand that it will not 100% protect the animal, but it's much better than no colostrum.
When you're in those situations where it's like something or nothing, something, yeah. And like you said, we have a lot of literature to lean on and show that it does work, and great to be able to have products available to support that.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any final thoughts on enrichment before I let you go today? Or colostrum management in general? Any general grievances or?
I don't think so, other than the measuring thing like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, start measuring to refine your colostrum management.
But with that concludes our episode on optimizing your colostrum management with enrichment. Thank you again, Dr. Juliana and Dr. Dave. This has been a fantastic podcast, and look forward to hearing from you guys soon.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Colostrum, an SCCL podcast. For more insights, resources, and to see our products, visit sccl.com or check the show notes. SCCL has proudly supported producers worldwide for over 30 years, driven by research and innovation. Until next time, keep your herd thriving with science, nature, and care.